Hello everybody, this is Dean from Motion Media, and today we're going to look at converting a regular scene here into an exterior scene with some motion blur and all kinds of goodness, using HDRs to create reflections and lighting, matching our sun to the HDR, etc. Okay, so this is a free 3D model that I got from Turbo Squid. It's a great model, great texturing. It comes in the Max standard scanline, and this is a render of what it looks like right out of the box, and it took about 8.5 minutes to render, and looks pretty good. But we're going to convert this to Vray and do an exterior setup on it. And when we're finished, it's going to look like this. So you can see we got a lot of motion blur going on. We're using an HDR not only for the backplate but also for the lighting and reflections. And then we've set up a sun to match that backplate. So we're going to do all this from start to finish. Okay, so close this, close this. So like I said, we're set up in scanline right now, so I'm going to delete everything, deleting the plane, the camera, the lighting. Alright, and then we're going to just switch over renderers. Those of you who've watched these before, these are my standard settings for a starting place, so we're not going to touch anything here. Alright, so at this point, all of the materials, there are no lights and cameras, and all of the materials are standard, Max standard materials. So we're going to do just a quick and dirty convert. So we right click, go to Vray Scene Converter, we're going to turn on reflections and convert. Okay. Next we're going to add a camera and a sun. With the camera selected, I'm doing Control-C and then hitting the C keyboard shortcut. That puts us into camera mode. Zoom into our car here. Turn off angle snap for a second. Alright. And we'll add a sunlight. And we'll have it put the backdrop in. And we're going to use highlight, align, and put our sun on the hood. You can see there are a few extra pieces which we'll get to later. I'm going to hide those for now. Alright, and just so we can see where we are, what we've done is add a camera and lights. Actually, I'm going to adjust this camera. Turn off, put the white balance to neutral, turn off the vignetting. So let's do a smaller size here. Let's do a quick render and see what we have. We need to turn on the sRGB, and I can tell already I forgot to turn on the gamma control in here, so let's turn that on. So these are the default settings. Okay, let's render again. Okay, you can see now all the textures are coming in at 1. And one last thing, let's add a ground plane that is just going to catch shadows for us. So I'm just going to center that and then make sure it falls right under the tires. We're going to right click on it and make it a matte object. So turn on matte object, make its alpha contribution -1, turn on shadows and alpha, and then turn these all to 0. Lastly, we're going to assign a material to it that is dark and no reflection. Okay, now let's re-render again. This will create a shadow, obviously, and then it creates better reflections. Okay, so at the moment we haven't done anything to materials, we're just kind of dialing in a light source. Next, let's add one more light. This one's going to be a dome light. It's going to be invisible. We're going to center that one. And so right now, if I just leave it like that and hit render, basically what it's going to do is fill in just a little bit. So if we turn this up to 30, it's at 1 right now. Okay, you can see what we get. If we turn it off in the reflections, okay, changes a little bit, goes back to the sky instead of the white. Alright, looking pretty good. So now what we're going to do is switch to an HDR and then line our sun up to that. So let's just call this, just save it here. Okay. So the easiest way to do this, because I want to see the HDR in my background, is I'm going to exchange the sky for an HDR map. Open up the materials here. We're going to make this an instance, and then we're going to I'm going to use this one. I'm going to use a different one from what's in the other image. Yeah, maybe that is the same one. Alright, we're going to use 12 from this collection. Alright, we're going to use it in spherical mode, and actually I'm going to turn that up after. Okay, so let's re-render. You can see now it's in our background. You can see it's very dark. Generally you have to turn these up in rendering, so I'm going to turn this up to 35. Okay. You can see now it looks more properly exposed. More importantly, I can see the image. So now I just like to, I'll just turn it and adjust my camera so that I'm looking more up into the sky. And figure out where the sun is. I'm going to hide everything else for just a second so it'll go faster. Okay. I think we were pretty close right there. Okay. Alright. So in this particular case, with it rotated, I'm going to unhide everything and then position my sun in the viewport, which is pretty close already. But we're going to go right in here, go up just a bit. Okay, and we can look at the images here. In fact, it feels like maybe the sun should be a bit more right in here. Perhaps even up a bit higher. Alright, let's do another one. Okay, alright, that's pretty close. Okay, so now as long as we leave the background the way that it is, and the orientation in terms of the rotation here, and the light source, they are lined up, and so we can move the camera wherever we like, and it's going to match up. So if I move it to the other side, do a render. Now it's sitting on the sidewalk, but shadows are going the right way. Sun is coming almost directly from behind the camera, which is what we see here. Okay. So, pretty straightforward. That all looks good. Alright, let's use this position here. So let's zoom in a bit. Okay, and then let's adjust some of these materials. Okay, now let's do the body first. Actually, I'm going to use the eyedropper. Alright, so this is pretty straightforward. They just have the texture in here. So I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, that's kind of the cheat to create a specularity without the extra render time. The more accurate way to do it is to lock these up. And we're going to give it a bit more reflection. And actually, we're going to do this with a map. Okay, now what I want to do is I need to create a black and white version of this, which I've already done. I'll show you what it looks like. See, that's the bump. There's the spec. Okay, so all I did was search through the black and white values until I got this kind of variation where nothing is quite black, nothing's quite white, and this is going to help define the reflections in the car. So we're going to load that into the white area. That's the bump, there's the spec. Okay. Alright. And for the moment, we're just going to do both these. Okay. So that takes most of it out of there. We're going to load up the materials that we've already created. Okay. Wait for that to catch up. Alright. So select all these. Okay, this is the final material. I did not use the bump map, so we're going to turn this off. Here's the specular in the reflection slot, but in a fall off. And then we actually turned off the Fresnel reflections, which pulls out quite a bit of that reflection. By letting it go over the course of the whole body, but controlling it with the map, we get a more even reflection. And then I blurred it just a little bit so that we could obtain this highlight. If you see, if we put it at 1 and hit render, it's just going to be reflective, but there's going to be no specular area. So if we put this just to 0.95, you see we're going to get a little bit of a highlight and also just a little bit of blurring on the actual reflection. If you look there, you see how it just blurred out as we went through, and you see how we got a little specularity. That'll help a lot when the camera moves around the vehicle. Okay. Alright, now what we're going to do, we're going to address the tires and what have you in just a few minutes. Now I want to switch back to the lighting, and we're going to grab the dome light. Oops. And we are going to load the HDR into the dome light. Okay, so we're just going to copy it right from the materials editor. Alright, resolution of the shadow is 2048. The default's 512. I've already turned it up. We're going to add this to reflections, and it's going to be invisible. So we'll hit render. So we're going to notice that it totally blows out here. And that's because we put the HDR map in there. So it's way blown out because the HDR is already turned up to 35. So we're going to take the value of our dome light, put it down to 1. Hit render again. Okay, that looks right. Okay. Now what's happening is the lighting, the shadows, the reflections are all being influenced by the background, which we're going to use in our render, and then the sunlight is creating our harder shadow as well as the specularity. And this shadow probably is a bit harsh. If we turn up the size of the light, you see it gets bigger there in the top view. We turn this up to maybe 5. Hit render again. We can soften this just a little bit. Okay, you see it's blurring it out there. And maybe we could even turn that up just a little bit more. Okay. Okay. Alright, that's looking good. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I've already gone through each one of these materials and updated them. So I'm going to quickly load these and update them in the scene. The process was the same for each. I locked the various components and added whatever blur was necessary. To get the proper reflection and specularity. All right. Okay. Oops, that's the grill. Okay, these are the tires. I took a lot of the reflection out of them and made them more a little softer reflection, so you can see a little bit more realistic looking in Vray there. So that's looking really good. Okay, so we're just going to keep this angle here. Alright. What's cool about this particular model is if you look closely, I'm going to hide some of this stuff. If you look closely here, he modeled separate front and rear tires that have a little bit weight on them, which looks really awesome. However, for spinning tires, that isn't going to work. So I'm going to select these. Okay. Those are just my stopped tires. Okay. Then he's provided separate tires here that are completely round for when the car is moving. So we're just going to move those up. And just eyeball them in this case. Alright. We're going to call these rolling tires. Alright, so let's hide the stopped tires. We don't need them any longer. Alright, we'll go to the rolling tires, freeze everything else. I'm going to group these, call them front, group these, call them rear. Okay. Now we're going to make sure the pivot points for each are in the center. Turn on angle snap. Turn on auto key. We're going to make sure that we're in linear mode, and then rotate these guys 360 degrees. Okay, I did it in 20 frames. We actually want to do it in 5 frames. So we're just going to move that keyframe back. Then we're going to go to the curve editor and choose our out of range types and do relative repeat. What this does is keep the tires rolling before and after frame 0. There's a dummy here. It's rotating. I'm going to remove that rotation. Okay. Alright. The reason I did that with the rotation of the tires, and we're going to do it with the movement of the car, is because if I were to render motion blur without that on frame 0 or the last frame, there'd be no motion blur. Now there'll be motion blur through the whole thing. Okay, we're going to do the same with, we're going to link these tires to this dummy, and we're going to move the car over 20 frames. Go to 20 here. Alright. Okay, so not quite fast enough. So we're going to move it a little further, and I'm just eyeballing it. Okay, still not fast enough. I want to try to get it to feel like it's actually moving by at a high rate of speed. Okay, that feels pretty good. Now we're going to go back to frame 0, and we're going to link our camera to that same dummy. Alright, now the camera is moving with the car, and then just to give us a little bit of blur on the body, I'm going to go and move the camera slightly so that there's just a little bit of difference between the camera and the speed of the car. Okay, now we're going to grab that dummy, and with the camera selected, we're going to go back to track view and do the same thing. We're going to go to the controller types, out of range, and choose relative repeat so that it's moving the whole time. And now you can see that the camera's moving at a high rate of speed with the car, but a little bit differently. Okay, so we're going to hide these other pieces. Get rid of that. Okay. Alright. That's what it looks like. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to roll my camera here a bit. Turn off the angle snap. Get a little more control. Because animate is turned off, as I make these changes to the camera, they're relative, and you can see they work throughout. So I'm going to move cursor to about the halfway point, do a quick test. Okay, that looks really good. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is turn motion blur on in my camera, and then I'm going to turn it on in the renderer. Okay. Now I want to break this up into two different pieces because I want to blur the background different from the car. So what I'm going to do so that my lighting stays the same, so I'm going to transfer this to there, and I'm going to turn it off in the background. Okay, we're going to also change our render size to 1920. Actually, let's just do 1280. Okay, hit render. Now it's going to render the car, the shadow, and all the motion blur on one path, or on one layer. We'll save this, and then we're going to render out the background separately, and then composite these together in Photoshop, adding the last few pieces of blur, color correction, some vignette, and what have you. Alright, I'm going to pause this and come back when it's done. Okay, so the rendering's done. I just wanted to point out we're at 1920 by 1080 with motion blur and HDR and what have you, and the render time was 1:29 versus 8.5 minutes on the other render with the scanline and no motion blur, and of course a much higher quality image. Alright, so we're going to save this Call this Dodge test car. We're going to save it as an EXR file. And we're going to do it with alpha and save. Okay. Close all that. Sorry, that was at 1280, not 1920. Alright, we're going to save that. Let's hide everything. Now we're just going to turn on that backplate. It'll render really quick. Alright. And we're going to save this as an EXR. We'll call this one back and EXR, and this one we want to turn the alpha off. Otherwise, the image will be invisible. Alright, so we're going to exit here. Oops. And let's grab those two renders we just did. Okay, test and BK. Okay, it's loading the files here. Okay, so we're going to simply duplicate this layer into the backplate. We can close this one. Okay, now we have the car and the backplate. And we're going to change from 32-bit to 16. We're not going to merge. Alright, so let's add some motion blur to the background. Okay, make sure we get the direction correct. Okay, that feels pretty good. Okay, we're just going to add a little bit of color in there because we're going to take it out at the end. Just give it a little more contrast. Pull the brightness down just a little bit. Okay. On the car layer, I'm going to add also a little bit of motion blur, just a little bit, like 1, maybe 2, just enough to have it moving in the photo. That looks pretty good. Alright, we're going to collapse this. Then I'm going to do just a little bit of color correction and take out just a little bit of that blue. Okay. And these parts are optional, but I'm going to copy and paste this layer, put it in screen mode. This time do a Gaussian blur. Looks good. Do a pass of brightness contrast and do a lot of contrast so that it just isolates the bright areas. Turn that way up. And then just bring the opacity down until we get just a little bit of glow there. Okay. Alright, I'm going to flatten that. Now I'm going to add a layer, put it in soft light mode, fill it with black, and then use the eraser tool, make it really big here, to create a little bit of vignetting. Alright, let's zoom out just a little bit here. Yeah, that's probably too much. Let's do that again. Let's fill it again, and I think the eraser is a bit too big there. I kind of want to just reveal the car. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that and do a little blurring on that one. A lot more than 5 though. Okay, and then bring that down. In fact, I'm going to go in here and just erase a little bit more. And actually that one's way too much. It says this one. Okay, then flatten that. And there you have it. Good looking exterior photoreal image of a car. Alright, we'll see you guys next time.